Lenora Carrington often gets labeled as a British surrealist, which is technically true, but it's also kind of funny because the art she's known for, the magical, mystical shape-shifting, didn't come from England at all. It grew in Mexico, literally. She spent more than 70 years there, absorbing its myths, its textures, its rituals, its everyday magic. So instead of thinking of her as a European artist who moved, I like to think of her as a woman who rebuilt herself between worlds, a woman who stitched Europe and Mexico together with dreams, symbols, and a very specific sense of womanhood. This video is basically a love letter to juxtaposition, because Carrington's whole life is built from contrasts. Privilege versus rebellion, Europe versus Mexico, surrealism versus lived experience, trauma versus reinvention, individual identity versus cultural influence, and the biggest one for me, the expectations placed on women versus the freedom she carved out for herself. To explore all of that, I'm looking closely at two paintings from her Mexico period, The Giantess and The House Opposite. This is where her identity really crystallizes and where her friendships with other women like Remedios Varo and Cady Horna help her redefine what feminine creativity even looks like. Lenora Carrington was born in 1917 in Lancashire, England, a world of aristocratic dinner parties, debutante expectations, and very little patience for girls with opinions. Carrington rebelled immediately. She was kicked out of multiple convent schools and eventually convinced her family to let her study art in London. In her late teens, she moves to France and joins the Surrealists, a group of artists who worship dreams and the unconscious, but also often treated women like decorations. Carrington was not having it. She painted, wrote stories, experimented, and refused to be anyone's muse. Then World War II hit. Max Ernst, the artist she was with at the time, was arrested by the Nazis. Carrington spiraled, was institutionalized in Spain, and experienced some of her darkest moments in her life. Her writing later shows how deeply this shaped her understanding of autonomy, embodiment, and the mind. In 1941, she escapes Europe through a marriage of convenience with a Mexican diplomat, Renata Ludek, and finally arrives in Mexico City in 1942. And this is the real turning point. Mexico City at the time was buzzing with exiled artists, leftist thinkers, poets, indigenous spiritual traditions, Catholic iconography, herbal healing rituals all swirling together. And it's here where she meets two women who change everything. Remedios Varo, the Spanish-Mexican surrealist whose art feels like a scientific dream, and Cady Horna, the Hungarian-Mexican photographer with the sharpest eye for the uncanny. The three of them become sort of an unofficial coven, cooking together, making art together, studying mysticism, experimenting with recipes that may or may not have been spells. Mexico didn't just give Carrington a home, it gave her the space to imagine a new kind of womanhood. The Giantess is one of the clearest symbols of Carrington's rebirth. We see a towering woman, serene, centered, enormous in scale, wrapped in a cloak that looks half religious, half architectural. Her hair, or halo, blooms into golden wheat. Tiny birds swirl around her like she's a gravitational force. And in the center, an egg. Now let's talk symbolism, because Carrington never chooses at random. The egg in European alchemy represents the beginning of the universe, creation, potential. In Mexico, eggs are used in limpias, or cleansing rituals performed mostly by women. Carrington merges both meanings into a simple object held gently by a cosmic creature. The wheat halo, Christian icon vibes, yes, but also fertility, nourishment, and the cycle of seasons. all ideas deeply rooted in both European folktales and Latin American agriculture. Birds, symbols of freedom and migration, they radiate out from the egg like new possibilities, like it's life she's building for herself after trauma. The palette, earthy greens, warm reds, turquoise tones, unmistakably connected to the colors of Mexico. It's folk art, markets, and landscapes. Now we go inward to the house opposite. The painting shows a tall, narrow house with stacked rooms connected by ladders and mysterious passages. In one room, three women stir a cauldron. In others, figures morph into trees, objects glow with their own eternal energy, and the walls seem too thin to separate anything. This piece is basically Carrington saying, "This home isn't a cage, it's a site of magic." Carrington's domestic scenes aren't about confinement, they're about transformation, about the feminine interior and spirit as a source of intellect, spirituality, and a creative, magical force. Put these two paintings together, the cosmic woman and the domestic labyrinth, and you see Carrington, building a new identity from the fragments of her own life. European alchemy meets Mexican ritual, surrealist dream meets actual real-lived migration, and womanhood shifts from a role to a realm of power. When you slow down and look at Carrington's work through everything she's lived through, the asylum, the war, the escape, the move, the friendships with women, the years raising children while painting every day, suddenly her surrealism stops looking random. It becomes more autobiographical, a bilingual system of symbols, European esotericism, Latin American spirituality, and the lived experience of womanhood. Lenora Carrington didn't just choose one identity. She stitched together many, and in those seams, she found freedom.